Domestic violence. What is that? Well, domestic violence is not just about physical violence. Domestic violence is any behavior that once try to gain control or gain power over someone else. For example, their intimate partner. It could be the girlfriend, the boyfriend, it could be the wife, the husband, any intimate partner. Hello, my name is Brenda, and today I'm going to talk about domestic violence in this video. Let's jump straight into the causes of domestic violence. Why is domestic violence still a thing in 2021? Well, there are two main reasons why domestic violence is still a thing. The first one being that the abuser themselves doesn't have any control over their action or over their reaction to certain things, to certain situation. And the second reason is the victim themselves. Most of the time the victim are being manipulated by the abuser or even by themselves. They might think that the abuser is good. The victims most of the time have a hard time trying to escape from that situation, trying to seek help. It's not easy to get out of this type of situation. I myself have 3 theories as to why domestic violence is still a thing. Wanna hear? Let's go. The first theory is that the victim might feel like the abuser might change for the better, so they stay. They think they can make the abuser to become a better person, when in fact they are not. It's not easy to change people, and once it's too late to escape, they're going to be stuck there for a very, very long time until it damages themselves. Instead of healing the other person, it damaged themselves. And the second theory is that the abuser doesn't have anyone else to be their punching bag, if you know what I mean. Like, they don't have anyone else to let their anger onto. Like in this case, they can go on rampage on the victims. There are rules. You cannot just go and kill anyone if you're mad. So find your own punching bag. It's probably the abuser's logic. And my third theory is that it's, when a person is in this kind of situation, it's hard to tell whether or not they are in this situation. It's hard to get them out of their bubble. And since it is hard to get them out of their bubble, it's even harder in this pandemic, where everyone is asked to stay home. So you cannot just walk into someone's home, your friend's home, and check, are you okay? Cannot do that. All you can do is text them. And of course they're gonna lie. What do you think they'll do? Just admit, yes, I'm in a domestic violence type of situation? Of course not. Of course they're going to cover. It's hard to detect, especially in this pandemic. We have to stay home. There are many effects of domestic violence, and those who are heavily affected by this is of course the victim themselves. I'm just going a little bit about the effects. The first one is of course your physical. Like I said, domestic violence is not just about physical violence, which means there are physical violence in domestic violence. So let's say so those who are in this kind of situation, this domestic violence situation, relationship, if you want to call it that way, it certainly is a toxic relationship, if you ask me. Well, let's say every time you get into a fight, you got beat up. And let's say every time you get into a fight, you got beat up and you lost a tooth every time. What will happen to your tooth? It will be gone by next year. Next is your, of course, your physical. Next is your mental health. Those who are in this type of situation, of course they're gonna have trouble balancing their mental health. It's not going to be stable all the time. Of course they're going to be like this. That's how their mental state is. Always shaking, always anxious. So when you have mental issues, let's say depression, because you cannot get help, you cannot go anywhere, especially in this pandemic. Who wouldn't get depressed from that? I would. If I cannot get help, then I would be very, very, very upset. And if I'm upset, I wouldn't eat. And that's me. Let's say the victims is also like me. They wouldn't eat because they feel upset. What will happen to the physical? Of course they're going to get thinner every time. And in the worst case scenario, they might even starve themselves without even knowing it. So that's bad. That's one of the effects. And that's just talking about the victims. We're not even talking about those surrounding the victim. Let's give a situation where a wife and a husband is fighting, and then there's this little kid around 5 years old maybe, watching from the back of the window. That's weird. From the back of the door, peeking through the door. What is mommy and daddy doing? It breaks the little heart knowing that the mom and the dad is fighting. And even worse if the dad is beating the mom. Imagine, just imagine what will happen to the kid when the kid grows up. The kid might even be an abuser themselves one day. Or they can also have unstable mental health. I mean, they can only watch and not do anything. Won't you feel bad? I would. If I were the kid, I would feel really, really bad. I cannot do anything. I can only watch. Enough talking about my theories and all. Let's talk about statistics, the real facts. These statistics are taken from reports that I read online on newspapers also. Let's see. There are 78% of news or articles over the last 20 years that claims domestic violence in relationship. It's just normal incidents in a relationship rather than reporting it as abusive acts. Do you know the IPV, intimate partner violence, in Malaysia alone? It ranges between 4.94 until 35.4. Ranges between 4 something and 35.9%, if I'm not mistaken. You can look at the slides. I don't really remember the numbers, but there are more physical and psychological violence reported, and then followed by physical and sexual violence in IPF, intimate partner violence. Those are the reports I read online. And did you know that there are 2,287 cases reported this year alone, 2021? It suddenly went poop because of this lockdown, because of this pandemic. They have to stay home. Who else Who's with them at home? The abuser, of course. Of course the case is going to go up. It's not going to go down. And also, did you know that there are only 20% of domestic violence cases that are detectable by the professionals? 20% only. What happened to the other 80%? Undetected. They are undetected. Why? Like I said, it's hard to get them out of their own bubble. It's hard to get them to confess. It's full of manipulation. So in conclusion, it is hard to detect domestic violence, and it's hard to get people out of domestic violence situation. It's hard to do anything about domestic violence situation. What we can do is spread awareness about it so that more people will look out for more people. Understand? What we can do is spread awareness about domestic violence so that it becomes a thing that needs to be aware by a lot of people. Then a lot of people can help detect whether or not this person have domestic violence in their relationship or not. It will most probably help lessen the cases this year and the years onward. Thank you. That is all for me.